Okay, so a lesson for life here is how can we apply what Samson did to how we live every day? The first thing that came to my mind is posing and flexing at the gym. It's like, is that really necessary? Do you really need to flex? Like, you should go there, you should lift, you should hit the treadmill, you should get the hell out of there, right? Wrong.
Hi guys!
What's up, guys?
Welcome to the supersetyourlife.com podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration, entertainment, and education to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym.
On this 54th episode, we have what is something very new and hopefully enjoyable on your end, depending on where your faith is. If you share our faith, I think you're going to love it. If you don't share our faith, I would really encourage you to listen anyway. There's some very, very valuable lessons here. So this episode is the perfect example of how to abuse your strength. This is the story of Samson, who is the superhero of the Bible. Judges chapters 13, 14, 15, and 16 is what gives the account of this interesting dude. And I thought that it would be something that we could all relate to, that listen to this podcast, that go to the gym, that work out, that are into strength, that are into muscularity. This is somebody that I've been infatuated with for that reason. So I came across this just on my own study, and I read this and I was like, wow, there's so many people that I know that listen to our podcast that could relate to this. So I'm just going to talk to everybody like you do share my faith. And if you don't, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. I'm not trying to push my faith on anybody. But I've had some requests to be more upfront about our faith and to share more about what keeps us going every day, what energizes us, what motivates us. You know, I'm not the guy in the gym that's just flexing to try to impress girls or to try to intimidate anybody. And if that's the reason that you're in the gym, then hear my heart here, but I really think that you're in the gym for the wrong reason. We believe in supersetting your life. So it starts at the gym, and then everything else in your life becomes better because you got your workout in, you're hitting your meals, and you're taking care of your health. So that being said, I'm going to just jump right into it here. We're going to cover 3 big lessons, and there's going to be lots of little lessons throughout this text as I read it. I'm just going to read chapters 13, 14, 15, and 16 of the book of Judges. If you have a copy of the ESV Bible is the version that I'm going to be using. It's my favorite translation. Maybe not necessarily the absolute best, but it's pretty damn good. It's very, very accurate, and I find the study notes to be very helpful, and the cross references too. So for those reasons, I like to do the ESV for my personal study. And yeah, I hope this adds value to you. I really, really do. Okay, I think you'll find it inspiring, and like I said, there's a lot of big lessons to take away here. So I've been working on this for the last couple weeks. This is something that the Holy Spirit has been encouraging me and pushing me to be more upfront about is our faith and why we believe what we do. I've also had some requests from some clients like, hey, you always talk to me about what you're learning, about what you're praying about, and you're very open to me about what your spiritual life is. Why don't you share more of that on social media? Why don't you share more of that on your podcast? And, you know, a lot of the reason has been because I don't want, when I read, it's a lot to take in. And when I study, it's a lot to take in. And when I pray, it's very, very personal. So I don't want to be reading with thinking, oh, how many likes is this going to get? Or, oh, how is this good? You know, what can I teach based off of this? You know, when you study the word, it should be, this is my opinion, I believe that you should first try to understand what the text is saying, then try to figure out what the text means, and then figure out how it applies to you after that. So it's usually like several steps later that the personal application really comes into it, because you just have to understand the context. You know, these are very, very ancient texts. It's the most well-attested ancient document in the history of the world, which is pretty amazing. This is what I'm going to share today is a real story about a real person that actually happened. And I'm going to be citing a lot of non-biblical, a lot of secular resources to support this account that actually happened. The Bible proves itself. I can do a whole day's worth of podcasts on just that truth, on that fact alone. But the fact that it is being consistently proven year after year after year as more science and more proof emerges, it just proves that these texts are accurate with astonishing accuracy. So, you know, I'm always trying to share things that are positive, things that are uplifting, and to encourage people through their workouts, through their nutrition plans, and to be the healthiest versions of themselves that they can be. And over the years that Taylor and I have been married and pursuing a number of different business opportunities together, I've read probably 60 to 70 self-help books, personal development books, business books, relationship books, leadership books. And a lot of my favorite books for a while were on the power of the subconscious mind, because it's all in your mindset. Everything that you do in the gym, everything with your relationships, it all starts up here. And the more and more that I've read books like this, they've been helpful. Don't get me wrong, but when I started the carnivore diet, I pretty much eliminated everything when I discovered that meat is medicine, and that meat is what makes me feel the best, look the best, have the most muscle, be able to have the best hormones, be able to stay at a lean body fat percentage, and be able to build muscle without gaining body fat. These are all things that I've found, just for me personally, to be most effectively done with just meat alone, which is why I'm such a big advocate of the carnivore diet. Taylor said that I should start calling myself a carnivangelist. And so similar to the way that my diet has evolved, my diet of what I read has evolved into where I get the most bang for the buck, the most return on investment for what I take in to my brain. And I found just the raw Bible itself to be hands down 10 times more impactful than any book that I've read on the power of the subconscious mind, Think and Grow Rich. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I'm not saying these books are bad. But if the law of attraction is true, the law of attraction, right? It says that if you see it, if you believe it, you can achieve it. If that is true, and if visualization is true, and if it's true to visualize something and visualize the type of person you want to become, and then you'll become that person over time. If that's all true, then why wouldn't you just focus your time and your mental energy on worshiping somebody that is perfect, who does have all the characteristics that you want? Then you would be more likely to become that person anyway. Chuck Missler, one of my favorite expositors, says that you will become like the God that you worship. So for that reason, this last year, this has gotten me through depression. I've been up and down through depression. We all have. It's been a very, very tough couple emotional years with the pandemic and with the scamdemic, whatever it is that you want to call it. By the way, if I sound a little congested right now, it is because I have a little bit of a sore throat. It's not COVID. Don't worry. I already had that, and it sucked. It was the worst sickness I've ever had. Not saying it doesn't exist. The sickness definitely does exist, but everything that's been happening in our country has been, in a lot of ways, more than my wife and I are able to handle, because we're seeing. I'm not going to go into that, but it's just been a struggle. It's been a tough last year, and so. Being involved in the Word of God, I've found to be very, very meditative. And so I've been spending a lot of my time and energy there at night to be able to unwind and to be able to relax and to be able to go to sleep. It's the last bit of information that I have before my head hits the pillow. So then when I'm asleep, my subconscious mind is chewing on that information. This is something that's a very valuable fact that I did learn out of one of those subconscious mind books. And that's something that's been able to allow me to fall asleep meditating on things that I know for sure are true, because there's not a single error in this entire book. There's not one thing that's out of place. There's not one word that isn't there for a very, very specific reason. And the more that you read this entire book and study it and really look at how the whole thing is written, it's amazing how true it is and how intentionally it's written. Okay, so we're gonna get more into that, but so I took a little more time than I wanted to, but I felt that some things needed to be cleared up before we jump right in this book. So last thing before we do is I have to give a disclaimer here before I share anything on this book, because I'm not a pastor. I don't have a seminary degree or anything like that. I have no formal Christian training. I don't consider myself to be in the area of professional Christianity, nor do I want to be, nor do I believe that's my calling. I believe my calling is to help people live healthier lives, take better care of their bodies, and that comes down to the 4 pillars of hypertrophy, which is what Taylor and I have been inspired to share and to teach. So anyway, I wanted to start with 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17 and chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. This is a disclaimer. Basically, what I'm about to say here says, do not listen to Colt Milton. Compare what I say to the biblical text, to the Word of God itself. So, that being said, we're going to jump right into Second Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be competent, equipped for every good work. Goes on into chapter 4. I charge you in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who is to judge the living and the dead, and by his appearing and his kingdom, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with complete patience and teaching. For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but have itching ears, that they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths. As for you, always be sober-minded, enduring suffering, do the word of an evangelist, and fulfill your ministry. So you listening to this, anything that I say right now that is just my opinion, or like when I say something after the text, like this is how it applies to my life, or this is how you could apply this to the gym, or whatever, you can always know if it's true by comparing it to what the actual text says. And that comes down to your personal relationship with God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So that being said, I think I've covered all the groundwork that I need to jump into Judges chapter 13. So I appreciate your grace on this. You know, I'm not perfect. I might say some things that you agree with, or that you disagree with. This is the first time doing this, so first time for everything, and jumping right in. The book of Judges, chapter 13, verse 1. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, who was named Manoah. That's a cool name. And his wife was barren and had no children. Does that remind you of anybody? Anybody else in the Bible that was barren and wasn't able to have children? The mother of John the Baptist was, and the mother of Samuel was, and Jesus was born of a virgin too. So this was another miraculous birth, is what I'm getting at here. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Okay, so this angel of the Lord character, I had to go to to one of the elders of our church. I went to his house, one of our pastors, and had about a 4-hour cigar conversation on this topic of who this angel of the Lord is. So to summarize it here, the best that I can, the most common view is that this is a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. This is the book of Judges. This is around the 11th century BC. So this is a long, long time before. This is a long time before Jesus was born. So there's a belief that Jesus appeared before he was actually born and made flesh. Just that alone makes no sense to me personally. I'm not saying that this is the wrong view, but it's without doubt, from what I can find, the most commonly held view. And this is what is held by Skip Heitzig, who is a Calvary Chapel Albuquerque preacher, and Chuck Missler. And I mean, these are two of my favorite expositors, people that I listen to these guys every single day for a couple hours. And this is like when I'm showering, when I'm getting ready, when I'm getting my supplements together, the first little bit of my workout. I mean, these are the guys that I'm listening to, and I love these guys, and I agree with pretty much everything they say. So for whatever it's worth, these people are much smarter than me, and this is the view that they hold. Okay, there you go. So the angel does not always mean an actual heavenly angel. When the word angel in the text is used, a lot of times it's meant to, it could also be translated as messenger. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an angel. An example for that is Revelations chapter 2 and 3. It's messenger is what it's referring to. So this is the same angel that accepts worship from Joshua in Joshua chapter 5, verses 13 through 15. Heavenly angels are forbidden to accept worship. Jesus teaches this in Matthew 4, verses 9 through 10. And an example of this is in Revelation 22:8. John is like kind of overwhelmed by the message that he's receiving from this angel, so he bows down and starts worshiping, and the angel basically says, "Do not do that. I'm an angel. You're not supposed to worship me." So very, very forbidden that they do that. So therefore, this angel of the Lord is not a normal angel. Okay, it's not just some other angel that happens to be in heaven. So for that reason, a lot of people believe that this is Jesus himself because he's accepting worship. Okay, my view. This is what this is what just makes the most sense to me. What I believe the Bible is saying is that this is the Ancient of Days. This is a very, very deep theological topic, but this is the visible image of the invisible God. And if you want a description of what this looks like, Daniel chapter 7 gives a full-blown description of what this image of God looks like. And it's really, really intense. It's pretty cool. So I believe that this is the image of the invisible God. Okay. Yeah, that's all I'm going to go into on that one. So because Jesus hadn't become flesh yet. By the way, this topic here, the angel of the Lord, is what I describe a non-essential theological argument. Just like HIIT cardio versus LISS cardio, LISS, that's a whole debate among bodybuilders of what is most effective in terms of fat loss. Personally, I am a huge fan of LISS. I never ever do HIIT cardio, nor do I recommend it in any of my workout programs. And the reason is because if you really want to maximize muscle hypertrophy, if you really want to minimize fat and optimize your body composition, I think that any energy that you have that could be allocated towards HIIT would be better used for just additional weight training. And then your cardio should be LISS, which burns fat better as a fuel source than glycogen. If you have glycogen, use that for what it's best for, which is lifting weights in the hypertrophy range. If you're doing low intensity cardio, that's a lot better at burning fat. So use that before and after you work out. Save all your glycogen for your muscle building exercises. And I think that's your best bet on having the best physique that you can. So most coaches that I know, most bodybuilders that I know share that view. And there's a lot of people on the other side of the fence that just swear by HIIT cardio, and they're like, "Oh no, bro, it's all about the afterburn. You'll burn way more net calories if you do it that way." So my experience is I've gotten better results doing LISS. But what do both those views have in common? Do both of them work? Yeah, both of them definitely work. Both of them can get you shredded. Both of them are good for your health. They're both great. It's just a matter of, we get to be where we're splitting hairs when we try to obsess over the differences and argue about them. This topic here isn't worth arguing about. This is something fun to talk about over cigars or before a workout. Not before a workout, because then I wouldn't get yeah, no. Do not talk to me about Jesus before a workout, because that's a long conversation that'll probably make me run into my workout, and then I'm mad the rest of the day because I didn't work out. So, okay, moving on here. This angel of the Lord continued to say, "Therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for this child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Okay, probably like, what the hell are these weird rules about? What is a Nazarite? Glad you asked. Numbers chapter 6, verses 1 through 12, basically summarizes that God, through Moses, gives anyone who wishes to voluntarily dedicate himself to God in this special way to take up a Nazarite vow. John the Baptist, Samuel, Samson, these are all examples of this. However, Samson's was not voluntary, but rather predetermined by God that he would be a Nazarite. So it's okay from anyone from any of the tribes of Israel, and it makes them special and holy to the Lord. That was the purpose of this. The 3 Nazarite laws, which we basically just read here, are number 1, they have to be 100% abstained from alcohol or anything even close to alcohol. They couldn't even drink grape juice. They have to have dreadlocks, and I'm being funny here, but what I mean by that is they're just not allowed to cut their hair. They have to let it grow out, and they cannot go near a dead body. So that's, I don't know why they would want to do that anyway, but that is one of the rules that has to do with ceremonial cleanness. So these people were to be an example by setting themselves apart for God. Okay, so ways that you can dedicate yourselves to your fitness goal, right? Number 1, clean out your pantry. This is kind of like being a Nazarite, but as an athlete. Number 1, clean out your pantry. Number 2, announce your commitment and say, okay, I'm going to do this. This is my goal. This is my deadline. Once you throw it out on Facebook, then there's no turning back. People know that you committed to something and you got to follow through with it. It's kind of like what the Nazarites are doing. And number 3, abstain from alcohol. Right? I mean, can you drink alcohol and still hit your health goals? Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to help. You know, you can make a case that, oh yeah, no, like 1 drink in moderation over time is actually beneficial for your hormone levels and stuff, and helps you fall asleep. I mean, whatever, I get it. I mean, at the end of the day, the athletes that you know and that you're inspired by aren't where they are because they drink alcohol. So anyway, with this in mind, watch how Samson throughout this story conducts himself regarding these 3 rules. Cool? Okay. Then the woman came and told her husband, because a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. She says, very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you said come again to us and teach us what we are to do with this child who will be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, behold, the man who has come to the other day has appeared to me. And Manoah rose and went after his wife, and came to the man and said to him, Are you the man who spoke to this woman? And the angel of the Lord said, I am. And Manoah said, Now when your words come true, what is to be the child's nature of life, and what is his mission? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink or any unclean thing. All that I command to her, let her observe. So the lesson here is that the takeaway that I got, this is a dad lesson here. He took the initiative as the father to ask God the will for his son. And that's what, as fathers, we should do, is we should take that initiative. And we should be going, okay, what's God, what does God want for our kids in life? Like, why are they here on this earth? You know, Taylor and I look at what's happening in the world, and we're like, I almost wish that our kids were born earlier, or that we could just get raptured and just be done with everything, and that our kids wouldn't have to deal with the stupid things they're teaching in public schools, and just have to deal with all of the evil that's happening in the world right now. But they are here for a purpose, and so it's an honor, I believe, that our kids are here with some sort of a job to do. Okay. Ephesians 2:10 says that everything that we are going to do has been predetermined by God so that we could walk in those good works. And so we are honored that our kids are here in this troubling time because we know that God's going to do something amazing through them. That's what we believe. Okay, continuing here, verse 15. Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "Please let us detain you and prepare a young goat for you." And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "If you detain me, I will not eat of your food, but if you prepare a burnt offering, then you can offer it to the Lord." It's almost like he's trying to hint at him that he's God himself. For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. And then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "What is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you?" By the way, that's an indication of faith. He said, when your words come true. And the angel of the Lord said, "Why do you ask my name, seeing that it is wonderful?" I love how he answers his question with a question. He doesn't answer the question. He doesn't say what his name is. That's what makes this angel of the Lord character so mysterious. But it's like the same thing that Jesus would say. You know how people ask Jesus a question a lot of times, he doesn't answer that question. He asks them a question in return to get them to think. So I thought that was interesting. So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went upward toward heaven from the altar, and the angel of the Lord went up in the flame with the altar, now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. So I think that means that they started worshiping him, or they were just like completely blown away. I would be too if that happened. This isn't the first time that happened, by the way. Flames come and abduct. Flames come and engulf offerings earlier in Israel's history up until this point too. The angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah said that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die, for we have seen God." But his wife said to him, "If the Lord had meant to kill us, we would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering at our hands, or shown all these things, nor announced us to such as these things." Okay, so what happened here? Manoah's wife, her outside perspective helped him to see the big picture. Taylor does this for me all the time. How often do we, as athletes, need an outside perspective from a coach, from a training partner, or even from a spouse? My last season of competing, my second to last competition, I was burnt out. I didn't want to do it anymore. I was done. I was like, I'm fried. I've tried to get my pro card over and over and over again. I still haven't got it. You know what? I'm just flat out spent. Taylor and my coach both looked at me and they're like, "Colt, you are so close. You can get that pro card. Push yourself hard for one more competition. We both support you." And I was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Taylor, we're about to have a baby." And she was like, "I don't care. I want this for you." And I was like, "Okay." And so we went ahead and did it. And I needed that outside perspective from them. Did I get my pro card? No, I got second place again. I keep losing to people that are bigger and stronger than me. So that's why I'm taking some time off and focusing on, I want to stay lean, getting this carnivore diet figured out, and coaching other people to help them get their pro cards, do the best that they can, get the physique of their dreams. I want Taylor to get the physique of her dreams too. Gives me time off the stage to build muscle slowly over time. 10 more pounds of muscle, I'll be really competitive, and I'll feel like I can win at that point. So as soon as I get there, I'll be stepping back on stage again, because I have some unfinished business that I got to take care of. Okay. I think that's all on that point. Okay. And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Mahanadan between Zorah and Eshtaol. I'm going to try to pronounce these Hebrew names as best I can. Right? So this phrase, Spirit of the Lord, began to stir in him. This is very, very important. This is where Samson's strength comes from. So notice whenever I say that word, what happens after that. It's very, very interesting. Excuse me. Okay. Samson went down from Timnah, and at Timnah, by the way, Timnah is an ancient city, doesn't exist anymore. It is now located at modern-day Tel Batash, and that is a hill in what is today Israel. Okay, so he went to this place, and he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines, and this is their oppressors. They are under Philistine rule at this time. Okay, and so he's going into his enemy's territory. Then Samson came up and told his father and mother, "I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. That's literally what he said. Can you imagine if I talked to my parents like that? Like how they, if when I met Taylor, if I told them to go get Taylor as my wife. Now, granted, back then they had arranged marriages, and this was mostly for the case of protecting women. People think that the Bible is in favor of men when it comes to differences between men and women, and it's not at all. A lot of the reasons that certain rules or regulations or laws between men and women are there is because women were so much oppressed at the time that these laws had to be put in place to counteract the sin of the world that was happening. And so there was gender inequality up until the point that a lot of these laws were put in place. And so we really have the Bible to thank for our moral basis on what gender equality looks like, despite what some people like to say. All right. So, but his father and mother said to him, "Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives among all our people that you must go in to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she is right in my eyes." This phrase here, "she is right in my eyes," this is a problem. This is Samson right now is embodying and demonstrating the exact problem that got Israel into this deep, dark pit of chaos and anarchy in the first place. And the reason is because if you read the entire book of Judges, what you'll see over and over and over again is everybody did what was right in his own eyes. They weren't looking to God for the moral basis. Everybody had their truth. Today we have this person has his truth, this person has this truth, this religion believes this, and this religion believes that, and that all things are true. No, not everything is true. 2 points that are completely contradictory both can't be true at the exact same time. So the problem here is that everybody was doing what was right in his own eyes. And Samson even says this right here, word for word. It's exactly what he says. That's why he wanted this woman. He was attracted to the way that she looked. He was lusting after her. Okay, so doing what is right in my own eyes is my natural tendency too, as an athlete, as a bodybuilder, just as a human being. So when I first worked with my coach Alfred, I was picking and choosing what he would recommend for me to do. But as soon as I stopped doing what was right in my own eyes, not that he's God, I'm just trying to make an example that we can relate to. When I just put all my opinions aside and started doing exactly what he said, that's when I was able to get the physique that I'd always wanted, and that's how I was able to look the best on stage that I could. I didn't get there until I stopped listening to myself and I started listening to somebody that knew what they were talking about. So, okay, going on to verse 4 of chapter 14. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines, his enemy. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. So he sought out a Philistine wife specifically because he wanted a military advantage. God didn't tell him to do this. This is his idea here. But God's still using it to make it work for his purposes, to deliver Israel from the Philistines. We'll see how this plays out. Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah, and behold, a young lion came toward him roaring. I'd be crapping my pants right about now. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion into pieces as one tears apart a young goat. I almost had a hard time believing that when I first read it. I was like, really? The Bible says that he tore apart a lion that was attacking him with his bare hands? Just keep listening. You'll see how this plays out. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked to the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. So this account is actually proven by archaeologically. This happened, and I'm gonna get to that after I don't want to digress from this or go off on a rabbit trail. But I'm gonna be getting as to why we know for a fact that the story is true. It's really fascinating. Okay. So after some days, he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees, in the lion and honey. And he scraped it out in his hands and went on, eating as he went. And he came to his father and his mother, and he gave some to them, and they ate, but they did not tell him that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. Okay, so what's the problem here? Remember we were talking about the Nazarite laws? The Nazarite laws, one of them is to not go near anything that is dead. Okay, so he already killed it, and he went back to it for food. It's really gross. I was actually eating steak when I was reading this, and I almost had to stop eating. But it was steak. I'm not going to stop eating steak. And so he breaks one of the 3 Nazarite laws. Not a good thing. His father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there. Whenever the word feast is used, it's almost always implied that there's alcohol present. So we can assume here that this is probably the second law that he broke, is being involved with alcohol, which was number 2 of the Nazarite laws that he's not supposed to break, because he's under this commitment with God to be a Nazarite. Not that there's anything wrong with alcohol necessarily. There's plenty of opportunity. there's plenty of drinking throughout the Bible that God is completely on board with and happy about. I mean, the Last Supper, for crying out loud. Jesus tells us to continue to do this in remembrance of him. But this rule of this vow of not consuming any alcohol was just something that these specific people were supposed to do to set themselves apart from God. That's it. I still drink my bourbon almost every night, and I love it. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. As soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with them. These are basically his groomsmen. Is basically the modern equivalent today of what these people were like to him. And Samson said to them, Let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within 7 days of the feast and find it out, I will give to you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. Okay, here's what's happening. Samson is obligated to give these men a gift because of their place in his wedding. He doesn't want to do it because he's cheap. So he's just giving them a riddle to try to cop out of it so that he doesn't have to do it. He's being a selfish dude here. Come on, Samson. And they said to him, Put your riddle so that we may hear it. And he says to them, Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. And this is what happened with the lion. It's not a very funny riddle. So anyway, he's just telling them something that there's no way that they'll be able to guess the answer to. And in 3 days, they could not solve the riddle. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, Entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us here to impoverish us? And they're not kidding. They will literally kill these people if they do not do what they're asking them to. The Philistines are very, very sinful, very, very evil, very, very ruthless people, and that's why they were commanded to be killed and to be wiped out by the Israelites. Israel was God's instrument in removing a lot of the sin from the world at the time and from the land, so that His people could dwell in the land in peace. So these are the kind of people that we're dealing with here. Not that the Israelites are perfect by any means. They had plenty of downfalls themselves because they're humans and because they're people. So anyway, getting off on another rabbit trail. But the point is, they are demanding Samson's wife to tell them the answer to the riddle. And Samson's wife wept over him and said, because she doesn't know the answer, she goes, "You only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is." And Samson said to her, "Behold, I have not even told my father nor my mother, so why should I tell you?" And she wept before him 7 days that their feast lasted. And on the 7th day he told her, because she pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people. And when the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, "What is stronger than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" So they got the riddle. They got it right because they pressed his wife and got it from her. And then Samson said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle." It sounds like he's calling his wife a heifer. That's not actually what he's saying. What he's basically saying is, you used my wife for the wrong reasons. It was wrong of you to press her for the answer to my riddle. That's what he's saying, and the reason is because he's using an analogy here with plowing. You wouldn't plow a field with a heifer. You would use an ox for that. So anyway, it's still wasn't something very polite. I'm not saying that Samson is justified in any of this by any means, because I don't like what he does here. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon Samson, and Samson went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town, and took their spoil and the garments of those who had told the riddle. Okay, so here's what's happening now. He's beginning to act out of rage. He just personally killed 30 men because his groomsmen interrogated his wife. Now, these aren't even the same guys. These are just 30 other guys. They're still enemies. But they're just 30 guys that he went and killed to blow off some steam, took all their stuff and gave it to the 30 people that he was obligated to give these gifts to. He just blew off his steam at the expense of 30 men, and Samson is using his God-given power for evil and for vengeance now. Okay. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companions who had been his best man. So when he was gone, you'll see what happens next here is they gave his wife to his best man because he was gone. They didn't think he was coming back. Yikes. After some days, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson went down to visit with his wife with a young goat. It was like a gift that he would give his wife after he hadn't seen her for a while, a young goat. And he said, "I will go into my wife in the chamber." It's a code word for having sex. But her father would not allow him to go in. And her father said, "I really thought that you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead." It is so weird to come from your father-in-law. Imagine your father-in-law, if you're married, saying, "Oh, I didn't know you were coming back. I gave your wife to somebody else. Take my other daughter. Isn't she like way more attractive than she is? She's more fit. She's more in shape. You should check her out, bro." Like, no. I'm not even going to go there. Okay. And Samson said to him, "This time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm." So Samson went and caught 300 foxes. By the way, this could also be translated as jackals. So foxes, jackals, whatever. And he took torches. And Samson took them tail to tail and put the torches between each of the tails. And when Samson had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and set fire to their stacked grain and their standing grain, as well as the olive orchards. Then the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they said, "Samson, the son-in-law of Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companions." And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. And Samson said to them, "If this is what you will do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit." And he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow, and went down and stayed to the cleft of the rock of Etam. So Samson kills all these people personally. This is an act of vengeance, and it's completely out of place because vengeance belongs to the Lord, not to Samson. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 32, 35. That is when the law was given that vengeance was to be God's. And it's also said all throughout the New Testament too. So today, as the church, we are not to take vengeance. We are to trust that God will take vengeance because God is just, and we are not just. If we were just, we wouldn't be dealing with this. If Israel was just, they wouldn't have been dealing with the chaos and the anarchy that they're dealing with here in the book of Judges. So then the Philistines came up and encamped at Judah and made a raid on Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" They said, "We will come to bind Samson and to do as he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam and said to Samson, "Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? Why is it then that you have done this to us?" And Samson said to them, As they did to me, so I have done to them. And they said to him, we have come down to bind you that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines. Now, these are allies, by the way, but they're like, hey, we've been okay with being ruled by the Philistines. I mean, everything's fine. Don't rock the boat is basically what they're saying. And so they're going to give Samson over to them. And Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. And they said to him, no, we will only bind you and we will give you into their hands, but we will surely not kill you. So Samson just wanted to make sure they weren't going to kill him, but he's cocky, he's arrogant, faithful, I guess, in a way. You could call it faithful, because he definitely has faith and confidence in the gifts that God's given him in terms of his strength. So anyway, they bound him up with two new ropes and brought him before the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came out shouting to meet him. They're amped. They're like, okay, here's this jerk, Samson. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon Samson, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that had caught fire, and bonds melted off of his hands. If this is hard for you to believe, I know it's kind of hard to look at these miraculous works and be like, wow, did that actually really happen? Or is that just poetic extravagance or something? I mean, if God created the earth in 6 days, he can make these ropes melt off of Samson. So this is nothing compared to other miracles that have taken place. Conception from a virgin birth, yeah, nothing. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey and put out his hand and took it and with it he struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men. So he's saying this, he's singing it, he's taunting, he's mocking them. He's very, very overconfident at this point. By the way, he slew 1,000 Philistines here with the jawbone of an ass. Okay, I heard a motivational speaker one time say that Samson slew 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. I find many people's dreams crushed by the exact same thing. I thought that was pretty powerful. Okay, so as soon as he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and that place was called Ramoth Lehi. That means hill of the jawbone. So, yeah, I'm going. I heard you're moving to a new neighborhood. Yeah, I'm moving to this place called Ramoth Lehi. It means hill of the jawbone. Oh, I heard it's a nice, peaceful neighborhood. Okay. As soon as he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and the place was called Ramoth Lehi. And he was very thirsty, and he called upon the Lord and said, you have granted this great salvation by the hand of your servant, and now I shall die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised. So this is the first time that Samson has actually called to God when he's hit rock bottom. So was it polite the way that he asked? No, he's very demanding and whiny and complaining. But he asks. He still asks. He still turns to God. And it took getting to rock bottom to get there. So my suggestion for you listening to this as a listener is, I guess how else would you be listening to it, is to consider whether maybe you're in rock bottom now. Maybe you've been there before. Did you cry to God? And do you think that maybe that's God putting you in that situation so that you would call out to him? Because up until that point, Samson had never called out to him before. I think that happened because God wanted him to call out to him. Take that for what it's worth. And God split open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water came out from it. And when he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore, the name of this place is called En-Hakor, and that means the spirit of him who called. It is at Lehi to this day, at the time that this was written, a couple hundred years later. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Cool? Okay, we are on chapter 16 now. We are about 75% of the way through this. Love you guys for sticking with me. Thanks a lot. Okay, Samson went down to Gaza. And we all know that name. It's been on the news a lot. And there he saw a prostitute, and he went into her. And the Gazites were told, Samson has come here. And he surrounded the place and set an ambush for him all night at the gate of the city. They kept quiet at night, saying, let us wait until the light of the morning, then we will kill him. But Samson lay till midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the gate of the city, these two posts, and pulled them up, bar and all, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. That's about 40 miles. So, okay, he's being attacked. He's going to get ambushed. And instead of just running away, which would be the logical thing to do, or killing them all, because he probably could have done that too, he takes the gates of the city, throws them on his shoulders, and storms off and steals them. I mean, like, how do they explain this? how do they explain to the kings of the city what happened? That's what I want to know. So, the obvious question that I was stumped on when I read this, and a lot of the commentaries that my go-to favorite commentaries to go to, they really didn't have a lot to say on this. But my obvious question was, why did Samson uproot the doors of the city and haul them off for 40 miles? So my best guess is what I found in is actually Dr. David Jeremiah's view. He's one of my favorite expositors too, and this is what his Bible says. The Jeremiah Study Bible. He didn't write it; he wrote the study notes to it. But I found his Bible to be very, very helpful, specifically with prophecy. This guy is so smart. I love listening to his sermons and love reading what he has to say. So this is a quote from him, and I'll cite this in the show notes, by the way. He says, "While this was a superhuman feat, it was completely self-serving, done to anger and to mock the Philistines rather than simply escape. Both Samson's moral weaknesses and his physical strength were on display here." And that's from the Jeremiah Study Bible, page 335. Okay, so a lesson for life here is, how can we apply what Samson did to how we live every day? And the first thing that came to my mind is posing and flexing at the gym. It's like, is that really necessary? Do you really need to flex? Like, you should go there, you should lift, you should hit the treadmill, you should get the hell out of there, right? Wrong. Posing, for me, is it's obviously a sport, right? It's an art, and it's the medium the medium of this sport of bodybuilding just happens to be our bodies and how we present them as bodybuilders. And when I say bodybuilders too, I don't necessarily mean just people that are competing. It's anybody that goes to the gym that wants to change the way they look and wants to build, wants to grow, wants to be healthier. So posing is a great isometric exercise, and it teaches muscular control. It enables you to track your programs and to make sure that you're getting better, track your progress, and it also, in a well-developed physique, done tastefully and not intimidating, can be inspirational to beginners to give them a visual of what's possible. Some of my biggest inspirations when I started were Steve Reeves and Sam Okanola. Both of these are natural bodybuilders. Sam Okanola I've gotten to know personally. He's a reigning world champion right now. And seeing him pose at his routine just inspired me to go, wow, I could look like that. Or, wow, that is art. And that's what I love about the sport, is that it's just gotten me to get so laser focused on every single piece of food that goes into my body. Sometimes to a fault, sometimes it's overly obsessive, and I'm not saying there's not any downsides to it. It's certainly a drawback, but overall, having to get laser focused on my circadian rhythms and make sure that I'm getting quality sleep, make sure that my sex life is great, and make sure that everything else in my life gets me as healthy as I can be. Because if I'm going to step on stage, if I'm going to look like that, I need to be the best at all things health. And then we have the ability to teach it. So for those reasons, that's why I like to flex and pose in the gym. Is there a little bit of vanity involved in it where I'm like, heck yeah, that's way better than I looked before? Sure. Okay. There's always a war between the flesh and the spirit. I'm not going to say that I'm not at times a little bit of a douchebag for flexing, but I guess there's a war between the flesh and the spirit. I told you, I'm not a pastor. I'm not somebody that claims to be a Bible scholar by any means. But this is something that I love to share. This is something that I find inspirational, something that I find a lot of lessons from. And so that's the reason that I feel called to share about this. Okay. Okay. So after this, after he hauled off these gates, back to Samson now, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. Familiar with that name? This is a very, very attractive woman, apparently, and also, as we will see, a very deceptive woman, a very evil woman with not very good intentions. Um, and the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, "Seduce him, that we may see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him. And we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver." And Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me where your great strength is and how you might be bound so that no one could subdue you." Okay, so Samson is going to sin again here because he clearly lies to Delilah. He says, "If they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I shall become weak like any other man." That's total bullcrap, by the way. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 bowstrings that had not been dried, and she bound him with them. And she had been lying in an ambush in an inner chamber, and she said to them, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the bowstrings just like a thread of flax snaps when it touches the fire, so that the secret of his strength was not known. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how I may bound you." And he said, "If they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I shall be weak like any other man." Again, it's BS. So Delilah took the new ropes and bound him with them, and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And the men lying in the ambush were in the inner chamber, but he snapped the ropes off of his arms like a thread. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web and fasten it tight with the pin, then I shall become weak like any other man." So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into the web. And she made them tight with the pin and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he awoke from his sleep and pulled away the pin and the loom and the web. And she said to him, How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies." And when she pressed him when she pressed him hard with the words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. He was annoyed. She was nagging him. Factor in, she's also very, very seductive too, and so imagine all these thoughts that are going through your head. You know what they say? God gave us guys 2 heads and only enough blood to use one at a time. So I think his thoughts were just they were going towards lust, and they were going towards sin. And he was being very, very tempted. Okay, the temptation was too much for him at this point, so he told her the truth. He said, all this, as he told her, and he told her all of his heart, and said, "A razor shall not come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God unto my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." Okay, so he's telling her the truth now. Now, this strength here is that's now on the subject of his strength being correlated with his hair. I know it sounds kind of weird. And so Samson's strength hinged on his Nazarite commitment to the 3 Nazarite laws. So now he would be breaking the 3rd and final one. It's like it's the last straw. He's now officially broken all of the parts of the commitment as to why he had the strength in the first place. Because he'd already violated 2 of 3 of them. His long hair was the only act of obedience that he had been showing up till now from the Nazarite law. Hence the truth that his strength would be, in fact, lost because of his hair being cut. So that's why that happens. That's why this happens. Okay, so we already know how this is going to play out. Delilah said that he had saw that he had told her all his heart, and she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up again, for he has told me all his heart." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees. And she called a man and said to him to shave off 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." So he's still not even really thinking right. He's still thinking like, whatever. Like I'm probably fine. I probably still have my strength. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. And this is some of the saddest some of the saddest words in the Bible right here. He did not know that the Lord had left him. The Spirit of the Lord was not upon him anymore. And the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him in bronze shackles. And he ground at the mill in the prison, but the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. So his strength is starting to come back to him. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god. This is the name of the god that they worship, a false god, and rejoice. And they said, "Our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand." And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, "Our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us." And when their hearts were merry, they said, "Call Samson that he may entertain us." So they're making him like put on a show for him, I guess. They're humiliating him, and they're very much entertained by this because they hate this guy. He's killed thousands of their people up to this point. And they said to Samson out of the prison, and he entertained them, and they made him drink, and they made him stand between the pillars. And Samson said to the young man who had been by his hand, "Let me feel the pillars which are on that on which the house rests, that I may lean up against them." Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women who looked on while Samson entertained. Okay. Then Samson said to the Lord, "O God, O Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once, O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Okay, so this is the second time that he calls to God now, again when he's at rock bottom. It's the only time that he even talks to God, at least that we see that he talks to God, is when he's literally at rock bottom. Okay, so again, Samson selfishly seeks vengeance here. That's his motive. Shockingly, God grants his request to protect Israel from their enemies. So pretty cool how God still works out his purpose even through people's sinful desires. And Samson grasped the 2 pillars, the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, and his right hand on the stone, and his left hand on the other. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Okay, so Samson now accepts his fate. Sadly, we see no repentance here, but he does seem to accept his death as a reasonable consequence for the choices of his life. That's what I noticed here. Okay. Then he bowed with all of his strength, and the house and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it, so that the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those he had killed up through the rest of his life. So if you do the math, that's around 4,000 to 6,000 people that he killed personally without an army. This is one man that killed this many of their enemies. Then his brothers and all his family came down and took him and brought him and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had judged Israel for 20 years. So Samson, by the way, is in the Hall of Faith, okay? So this is really cool. This is where the story really ends, because that's the end of the story of Samson as written in the book of Judges. But if we go to Hebrews chapter 11, we see something called the Hall of Faith. And this Hall of Faith is a running commentary, essentially, on a number of leaders throughout the Old Testament who have shown faith at different points in times. And here's the part where it talks about Samson. We don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews, by the way. But it's divinely inspired. God wrote it. And what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David, of Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, and put foreign enemies to flight. Very, very powerful statement about Samson here. What's interesting is that nothing is said of all of the shortcomings of Samson. The only thing that is said here about Samson is that he had faith. Why is that? Here's my speculation here. I'm just reading what I wrote down. These people's shortcomings are not mentioned. Why? Because their sins have been forgiven by Jesus. Um, they've been forgiven. They've been forgiven by His finished work on the cross, and God has chosen to forget their sins. So Jesus has made them perfect. That's what I get out of that. Okay. So what else did we learn? This is really interesting. Samson's sacrificial death, although it was brought upon himself by his poor choices in his life, they point towards Christ's death on the cross. What other parallels do we see here? His last words were spoken to God. Same thing with Jesus. His death was his death killed sin. In Jesus' case, it killed sin itself. In Samson's case, it killed sinful people, and sin as a byproduct of that. And his death brought freedom to Israel. We can say that is true about both Jesus and Samson. So there's a lot of parallels here. He's also very similar to Jesus in the way that he was his birth was foretold by an angel. He had a miraculous birth, as we discussed earlier. His mother was barren, Mary was a virgin, and he performed works that no ordinary man could do. And he had long hair. So anyway, Romans chapter 15, verse 4 says, "For whatever was written in former days was written for our instruction, so that through endurance and through the encouragement of Scripture, we might have hope." That is why this was written. This is a real account of something that actually happened to a real person. How do we know? Glad you asked. Okay. So the ancient city. So first one is the ancient city of Timnah. This is located at modern day Tel Batash. Was excavated in the 80s, and this is in modern day Israel. They found that there was a thriving Philistine city at the time, and they found impressive mud brick stone fortifications similar to what's described in the Bible. The source for this is ESV Crossway Study Notes on page 462, and also on Wikipedia. You can look this up on Wikipedia. I'm going to put links to these sources again in the show notes. Samson's sacrificial death, killing approximately 3,000 Philistines, is also very well documented by the famous secular historian Flavius Josephus. My source for that is the history book Josephus, The Essential Writings, a new translation by Paul E. Mayer, page 97. Third point is the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, modern day Israel, and the wars among the nations are described in the book of Judges, including chapters 13 through 16, and they're well documented in ancient Egyptian texts. My source for that is the ESV Crossway Study Notes, Introduction to the Book of Judges, page 434. A couple archaeologists that support that as well. The seal stone, there's a stone picturing a man fighting a lion with his bare hands. This is precisely as is described in the book of Judges, chapter 14, verses 5 through 7. And it was discovered in Tel Batash, ancient Timnah, where Samson killed the lion. And this stone is dated by archaeologists back to 11th century BC, which is the time of Samson. Fascinating. Source for that is Watch Jerusalem, and the article is the Samson seal. The same article actually shows that archaeological evidence consistently confirms the 11th century BC struggles between Israel and the Philistines. And the strongest attestament that we have to this story being true is the Apostle Paul confirms that all of the Old Testament accounts, this is what I just read in Romans, that all of the Old Testament accounts as having taken place exactly as they are written in the original manuscripts, by the way, of which are very, very accurately translated. The reason we know this is because there's like 5 or 6 of them that of the original translations of the Hebrew text, and there's like 2 or 3 discrepancies among all 5 of them, and these have been uncovered all over the world. So, next point. So what does that mean? The Bible is 66 books penned by 40 plus men. All right, and all of the books support the truth of the other books. All Scripture is divinely inspired and therefore written by God as by means of man. And this is what I read at the start of the podcast. I'm just going to remind you what it said. 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17. All scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be competent, equipped for every good work. Okay. Reproof, by the way, means an expression of disapproval. It's a fancy way of saying that. So the lesson here is that this is one of the reasons why it's not necessary for God to give a leader superhuman strength like Samson today, is what I'm saying. In this age, in this dispensation, we have something far more powerful than Samson's superhuman strength. We have the Word of God, which, as Paul just told to Timothy here, is that gives us the ability to teach, to reprove, to act righteously, and the Bible proves itself. And the Bible does all these. Samson's strength didn't give him the ability to do any of those things, any of those last things that I just mentioned. Okay. All right. Wrapping up here. So, what did we learn, to summarize, from Samson's example? The first main point that I wanted to unpack is that the strength that we have as humans is a gift from our Creator, and our Creator has every right to take it away if it is abused. Samson gave into his temptations when he could have and should have turned to the Lord. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says that no temptation has overtaken you that is uncommon to man, but God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you know you are able, but with the temptation will also come the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. So that's something to remember anytime that we're tempted. Okay, and then the last point is, no matter what mistakes you've made, how dark your past is, what your heart has been like in the past, God chooses to forget your sins and looks at you through the rose-colored glasses of his Son, Jesus Christ, and who has paid the price for your sins by his death on the cross. And all you have to do to be forgiven is to apply the Christian bar of soap. That's what I like to call it. It's 1 John 1:9. This is an easy one to remember because it's just 911 backwards. So 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So don't worry about how you say this to God when you confess your sins. Just say it because he looks at your heart. Okay. So to wrap up, any thoughts or questions that you have on this, please call me or text me, 206-743-1346. If you'd like to pray, if you have any questions at all, this is hands down my favorite topic. Okay. Share with someone who, if you find this valuable at all, please share this with somebody that you think could use encouragement. Okay. And that's a wrap. So, love you guys, all of you, for listening to this podcast. Thank you again so very much. Hope you have an awesome rest of your workout, rest of your day, whatever it is that you're doing while you're listening to this episode. And I love you a lot. I really do. Okay, from the bottom of my heart, God bless. Catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.